Hey folks, welcome back. In our last video, we looked at the anatomy of a montage. In this video, we'll take a look at how do you develop the idea to create a montage, just like the one that you're seeing right here. So let's get started by understanding the approach that I use. We'll start off by selecting a genre. That's typically the first thing that I would recommend doing. So you probably have a favorite genre or category of narrative. It could be fantasy, it could be sci-fi, it could be Western, it could be action, it could be romance. There's all sorts of different genres that you can exploit. There's the buddy cop, which is typically like an action adventure with two characters in it. So selecting a genre is really, really critical to begin this process. Next, you want to go ahead and make a list of between 3 to 4 people and animals or other creatures, places and objects and vehicles. So this just jogs your memory or just basically creates something that you can reference as you're looking for photographic references to work from. And you can see here in my case that I have listed a column for people, for places, and for objects and vehicles. Now, do I have to use all of these elements? No, but this just gives me an idea. You could have more people, more places, and more objects and vehicles, but I'm just restricting myself here for the sake of brevity. So being very descriptive about the people and the places and objects and vehicles, I think is important. So you can see that I've got a military train here versus a bullet train. I wanted to draw trains, so that's why you see two trains listed twice. But you can easily shake things up by adding cars and other elements, guns, what have you. And I picked, 70s TV set and 80s computer display. I picked a couple of general locations, castle, desert, forest, and then the people. I've picked female astronaut, samurai warrior, motocross racer, cute girl. So these are all things that these are just kind of like the things that I want to draw. And you have to be descriptive. You want to think about how old or how young is this person that is going to be in this particular imaginary story that we're weaving in our heads. So once you've identified those elements, then the next part is to find photographic references. You can use places like Pixabay, Unsplash, or royalty-free images or copyleft images or Creative Commons images to find appropriate references. I use Pinterest as well. I think Pinterest really has a lot of diverse objects to choose from. And I think that has been very helpful for me to pick things that are a bit unusual that I don't even really know that exist. Sometimes I'm on my Pinterest page and it's a visual bookmarking page and it just surfaces these interesting people, places, and things for me. So that's what I use for this particular composition that you saw at the beginning of the video. And then finally, you want to compose your montage using your references. This gives you a blueprint or a floor plan for how you're going to create a strong composition. And when you're doing that, you want to think about where you want the viewer to look, which is your focal point. You also want to think about leading lines. Those are the arrangement of objects and people and places and things that reinforce the focal point, as well as visual hierarchy. That's including large, medium, and small objects, and then lastly, thinking about creating depth. So I have examples of those things we'll take a look at here momentarily. I turn this off and bring about my notes. Now, I'll preface this by saying that the version that you're seeing here was not the completed illustration. In the completed illustration, I drew additional objects and things because I felt like I had too many medium-sized objects and I wanted to add some small objects into this composition. In fact, if we look at the original here, you can see that there's some papers and there's an alien creature and other things, pipes. I added those elements in after I did my pencils because I felt like I wanted to add more stuff. But using this as a guideline, you can see the first thing that I thought about was, okay, what's going to be the focal point? I wanted to create something that was more sci-fi adventure. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, why a samurai warrior? Well, think about what a montage is. A montage is connecting different people, places, and objects and putting them together, and it creates a narrative. So in this particular case, we're coming up with a story based upon the way I've arranged these elements. And leading lines are simply those lines that we follow for every person, place, or object. You can see that I've essentially followed the outlines for each of these objects. And those lines are bidirectional. They can either go towards the focal point, which in this case I've annotated, or they can go away from the focal point. But you can see that I've positioned characters either looking towards the focal point, like the motocross guy and the military guy. I've even positioned objects like the trains. They're moving towards the focal point. Even this young lady at the top here, she's looking towards the focal point. Even the waveforms on this television set are leading lines that are moving us to where I want the viewer to ultimately look. Focal point is the area of interest. You need to specify what that is so that you can arrange your compositional elements to support that. Uh, so after your focal point and leading lines, you want to think about visual hierarchy. So when you're arranging your photo references, you want to think about scale. So large, medium, and small objects. In this particular case, I've taken the easy way out by making the focal point the largest element and also placing it in the center. And that makes it easy to arrange the other objects. The focal point does not have to be in the center, but for this specific composition, it is. So you can see that I've indicated the large, medium, and small shapes. And once again, the text that you see here that represents small, that is for the paper that I went back and added after the fact. And then lastly, we've got depth. And in this case, depth is comprised of overlapped objects. That's what creates depth. If you have objects that are not touching each other or people that are not touching each other, then you don't really know what's in front of something else. So you can see here that my focal point in this case is in the midground, and then I've got other elements that are in the background and foreground. So you can have multiple objects in the foreground, multiple objects in the midground, and multiple objects in the background. Focal points do not necessarily correlate with having to be in the foreground. You can position them any way you wish. The important thing is that you want to be able to show that you have some depth within your composition. So that's basically how I go about it. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any specific questions that you feel that are follow-ups to what I've covered here, please drop me a comment to this video and I'll do my best to address it. I hope you found some value in this video. If you haven't considered subscribing to the channel, please do so. And if you find some value in this video, please give it a like, and I will see you in the next one.